You're listening to DruidCast episode 175.
Close the door, keep out the storm. Far away, far away. Keep the need fires burning till dawn. Whoa, whoa, leave my soul. For the cold will come this night, far away, far away. Frost will form and ice will bite. Whoa, whoa, leave my soul. Whoa, whoa, leave my soul. Please pass me by when the evening falls. Whoa, blessed are we, the hunter of souls we shall see on Samhain.
I am the shadow who calls to your soul.
I can hear the hunter's hounds far away, far away. I will cast a circle round. Whoa, whoa, leave my soul. Raven witch, I feel your breath far away, far away, bringing with you summer's death. Whoa, whoa, leave my soul. Whoa, leave my soul. Please pass me by when the evening falls. Whoa, blessed are we, the hunter of souls we shall see on Samhain.
I am the shadow who calls to your soul.
Sunrise, the tolling bells, far away, far away. raven witch's spell. Oh, blessed are we. The leaves of the oaken king fade away, fade away. Feed the seeds that will come in the spring. Whoa, blessed are we. Whoa, blessed are we. Summer will come with the May on the tree. Whoa, and hail to the Queen, and under the sun we shall sing to call in the spring.
The shadow calls to your soul.
Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, the season that drives the cold winter away. Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, light your bonfire, today is Beltane. High on Mount Caban we look down on Tolkien land, the minstrels away catch the sun on the sea. The ring of the Morris bells brings on the May morning, set free your spirit, come dance of the dawn. Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, the season that drives the cold winter away. Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, light your bonfire, today is Beltane. Down west in Padstow the wee oss spins round and round, pied by the teaser who's calling him on. The rhythm of the drums in the hills up above the town brings out the people for dancing and song. High on Mount Caban we look down on Tolkien land, the minstrels away catch the sun on the sea. The ring of the Morris bells brings on the May morning, set free your spirit, come dance of the dawn. Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, the season that drives the cold winter away. Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, light your bonfire, today is Beltane. High on Mount Caban we look down on Token land. The mist rolls away, catch the sun on the sea. The ring of the Morris bells brings on the May morning. Set free your spirit, come dance of the dawn. Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, the season that drives the cold winter away. Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, light your bonfire, today is Beltane. High on Mount Caban we look down on Token land. The mist rolls away, catch the sun on the way. The ring of the Morris bells brings on the May morning. Light your spirit, come dance of the dawn. Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, the season that drives the cold winter away. Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, light your bonfire, today is Beltane. Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, the season that drives the cold winter away. Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, light your bonfire, today is Beltane.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to DruidCast episode 175. I am your host, Dave the Bard, and DruidCast is brought to you on or around the 20th of every month by the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. If you want to find out more about the Order and our courses, you can do that right over there at our website at www.druidry.org. Hey, it's that time of year again when the axis of Samhain and Beltane passes across the earth in this beautiful image of death and rebirth. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, Samhain is nearly upon us, and you can really taste it in the air as those evenings have been drawing in. Whilst in the Southern Hemisphere, the power and energy of Beltane will spread across the lands, and for all of us, the veil will thin and the closeness of the other world is palpable. So in honour of that magical axis, opening the show, you heard my song Samhain Eve from my album Hills They Are Hollow, and that was followed by Weaving the Summer from my good friends Spiral Dance from their album Magic. And don't forget, you can find links to all of the artists featured in DruidCast in the show notes. My guest for this month's Talky Bit is Luke Eastwood, who has just released a new book that is all about the great festival of Samhain. We caught up on Zoom over a cuppa and explored some of the traditions and our experiences of the festival over the years, and it was a lovely chat. So grab your cuppa and I'll join you again after this month's Talky Bit.
The Talky Bit.
I am sitting here on Zoom with Luke Eastwood. I've seen your books, but we have never, I don't think, spoken before. So welcome to DruidCast, Luke.
Thank you very much for having me. And it's nice to finally speak to you. I've seen you obviously at some of the Obod gatherings, and I've listened to a lot of your music, but this is the first time we've actually had a chance to talk.
Yeah, that's really nice to actually, connect properly. But for the listeners of DruidCast, can you tell a little bit about who is Luke Eastwood? How did you discover your Druidry would be a good point to start with.
I suppose it's hard to kind of nail a particular point where I became interested, but I was always interested in history. One thing my dad was always very keen on. So I can remember certain things like I got bought a set of little tiny figures. They're like about an inch tall, and one lot were Roman and the other lot were the ancient Britons. So I'd have these little wars, and the Romans usually won because they all had the better equipment. They looked more cool. Then I remember the 70s series. I think it was called Arthur, or I think it was a BBC series. I'm not sure. But I remember watching that and being kind of very sort of impressed. And it's also a bit spooked because, it had all this mystical stuff and strange nights and weird things going on. Later on, my dad would mention stuff about history. He was a big fan of British history. especially Scotland, where I was born myself. But I obviously can tell I didn't really spend that much time there. So I remember watching the film Excalibur in the early 80s. Again, that was with my parents, and really, really liked that. So a lot of these sort of things have sort of slip in there subliminally, I suppose. You don't really kind of figure. I got quite confused about religion, sort of being in a sort of Catholic family. My dad was also sort of a bit of an atheist, despite being Catholic. So he says, "You've got to go to mass, but don't listen."
That's brilliant.
So I reached the age of about 15, and I was a bit confused about, well, is it all a load of old rubbish and I'm supposed to just ignore it all, or should I take it seriously? My uncle introduced me to Buddhism, the Buddhist text called the Dharmapada, which ironically he'd stolen from a hotel in Japan. So I had this book, and one page is in Japanese and the other page is in English. So I was like, really, wow, this is amazing. Just from having the strangeness of this Japanese book. So I read it and sort of started doing a bit of meditation, and then I had to give it all back. This little Buddha I had, a little, the Buddha with the fat, big ears and kind of corpulent, sort of very much associated with abundance. I think that particular version of the Buddha, but sort of smiling, happy Buddha. Anyway, but it did leave an impression on me this short period of time that I had the book, which I managed to read all of it. And so it got me thinking about the different versions of religion, different versions of reality, I suppose, because for many people, your reality is shaped by your religious beliefs, isn't it? So, and I think, well, there isn't one answer. There isn't, I sort of thought, well, maybe it's a bit like a supermarket where you can just go in and pick whatever fruit that you like. You don't have to have apples. You can have oranges or passion fruit or whatever. You've got a choice. So it was at that point, really, I started thinking about, what do I really believe? Do I believe in this grey-haired old man in the sky, or do I believe something else? So it took me some time looking at different religions and things to figure out what I thought suited me. And I mean, even now I'm still very interested in lots of different religions, sort of from just a curiosity, sort of social, sort of anthropology kind of viewpoint. I had a real big interest in Vedic culture, and you probably aware yourself, a lot of people have suggested there's a big link between India and sort of the Celtic sort of culture, the idea of migrating across into Europe. And there may be some truth in that. It's so far back, it's quite hard to prove, really. But so I kind of sort of stumbled towards the Druidry. And then, I really got interested in the whole eco movement when I was about 16. I joined a conservation group at college, and we were going around removing rhododendrons to make room for other species because they invaded so much of the college. There was very little else, really. And then, I got involved in Greenpeace as well when I went to London. And then sort of as this was happening, I kind of came more across sort of Celtic stuff and sort of the neo-Druidism. At that time, I didn't really know anyone. I wasn't involved in any groups or anything, just sort of reading and stuff myself. And I thought, well, this really fits because I'm really into the whole eco thing. And then, so you've got this religion that sort of very much revolves around nature in the same way that Taoism, does. In fact, probably I would have ended up being a Taoist if I lived in China or somewhere, because there's so many parallels between the two in their approach. So it just seemed to make sense that, my kind of ideas about, how to live in the world in a sort of terms of ecology fitted very well with modern Druidism. So I thought, well, yeah, I think this is probably what I want to do. But I had a great difficulty in sort of making any connections. It was kind of later on, I suppose. Yeah, I think it was in something about 1996, I think, I stumbled across the Book of Druidry, Ross Nichols' book, in a shop window. And I'd never seen a real book on Druidry. It's all been like history books.
Yeah.
So like, this is what the Druids did, or whatever. There's loads of books like that, but I had never found a book that actually was sort of actually told you what being a Druid is, or how
there
to go
weren't many
about
around
it.
at the time, were there? Weren't many books around in the kind of mid-90s like that. Yeah.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So when I saw this in the shop window, I rushed in there. And, I think it was quite expensive actually at the time, but I came back at lunchtime from work and bought it. I think they only had the one in there actually, but it was in the window, which was lucky for me. I found that really difficult at the time, because I didn't really, some of it was over my head. I didn't really kind of get some of it. But I came back to it again later, read it again, when I think I started the Obod course, for, the Bardic Grade.
Yeah.
I returned to it then.
And that's what you do. So it's amazing, isn't it? I think a lot of people probably their first kind of explorations of this kind of things, they were films like Excalibur. And for me, it was Robin of Sherwood. Back in the,
I remember that.
You remember with Michael Praed, and that was the first time I'd ever seen a figure of Herne, an antlered god in the forest. And I was young at the time, and it was the same thing for me. It was like, oh no, there's something going on here that is way beyond everything I've been taught. I've been taught that horns on a figure is the devil, but that is just fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. And the music as well, Planad.
That's right.
Of course, they've been massive in Ireland for a long time, but they weren't really known at all. But that soundtrack kind of propelled them into the limelight a bit.
Yeah, very much.
And in fact, I bought the soundtrack album of that series. Actually, no, it must have been not that long ago, probably maybe 10 years ago or something like that.
Yeah,
I saw a copy of it in the shop, and I thought, oh, yeah,
it's just great.
Yeah,
I've just got to hear that theme, Robin the Hooded Man, and I'm back sitting down like Saturday night with my mum and dad eating our tea in front of the TV, But it's that kind of like, it's the mysticism, I think, that draws people. It's the kind of sense that inside many of us know that there's more to life than just the three-dimensional get up, go to work, come home, go to sleep life that many of us seem to, that there is more to this, that life is such a miracle that there must be more to it. And these programs, I think, kind of just go, yes, there is. They allow us to become more in touch with that kind of mystical side of us. So, and you use the word religion a lot in your search for Druidry, which is not what everybody says. A lot of people say that it would be a spirituality or something like that. But I know for many people it is a religious path. Is that, would you say it was for yourself, or when it comes? I mean, for instance, would you say that you were animistic or polytheistic, or is there a labelistic that can describe your view of that kind of stuff?
Well, I came from a sort of religious dogma, and then so that idea, but religion, it means different things to different people. It can mean, a dogmatic hierarchical system, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I mean, Quakerism is a religion, but as far as I know, people just sit around in a circle in equality, and then when they feel moved by the spirit, they just speak. So that's a kind of religion that isn't dogmatic. But as a general rule, throughout history it has tended to be hierarchical and a bit dogmatic. So I'd say it's whatever you want it to be. It can be a spiritual path. It's a spirituality, but it also can be a religion if you want it to be that. I mean, as you know, there's a massive diversity of different types of Druids. I mean, I am going back to what you said about, there's more to life than, the house and the car and the job. That's one of the reasons why I wouldn't be an atheist, because I just thought, well, for me, atheism is the absence of meaning. I feel like there's no point in existing, particularly. And if life has no meaning because it doesn't mean anything, there's no consequences, nothing is important. There's no need for morality or any sense of value if nothing has any point at all. So I felt I really needed some sense of meaning.
Yeah.
So it kind of brought me towards, I sort of figured out what I really believe in is animism. I suppose I'd be a kind of pantheist or a polytheist, in that I do kind of ultimately think there's sort of one Godhead, if you like. But I'm kind of like, I suppose, henotheist, in that I believe that all these different gods and goddesses or whatever, they're all aspects of the one. They're just anthropomorphizations of whatever spirit is. I think spirit is beyond human definition myself. And, we're like little goldfish in a bowl looking at the world through this sort of distorted bowl. But the reality of the world is so much bigger than that. But we've got very limited faculties. We are only human. And so we have to kind of describe spirit in some way that we can understand.
Yeah. I've only got to go for a walk with my dog every day and just watch him as he explores the world through him. And he will read the newspaper as far as he's concerned. I call it the P-mail. So he will just go, we'll go for a walk and he'll read his P-mail as he walks along. Now, I can't see the world through that. I look at my dog and I'm just in a sense of wonder at the different way that a dog will see the world. And I think sometimes we're so tight with how we see the world as it being all there is, but actually you just got to look at another creature to know that there are many ways of experiencing life, and I love what you said about meaning. I think it was Rupert Sheldrake, I think is the name of the writer that brings to mind. He says something that really struck me a long time ago as being like a truth with a capital T, and that is that the constant drive and search for happiness is a mistake. Happiness is elusive and can literally fall through your fingers. What will keep that is a search for meaning. Meaning is what makes life powerful. It's what gives you direction in life, and it's not just about happiness, it's about meaning. So yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It's about finding the meaning in your life. And I think spirituality, myth, for instance, can give meaning to our lives, and direction as well. So yeah, absolutely. And you've just released a new book. I know you've got a few books out, haven't you? You've got some under your belt already, to be honest with you. But you've just released a new book that is all about Samhain, which is why I've asked you on to DruidCast this particular month. A book dedicated to the festival. So what I probably need to ask you is, what inspired you to write one book about one festival? What led you to make that decision to write that book?
Obviously, I'm become sort of interested in Celtic cosmology over the time through my studies with Obod and various other people and organizations, mostly here in Ireland. So one thing that struck me is that it seems to be quite a common theme, not just in Druidism, but other pagan paths, that, the Celtic New Year, the beginning of the year, is Samhain. So I often wondered, why is that? Wouldn't it make more sense if it was the winter solstice? Because that's sort of literally the cusp of the shift between light and dark. That's that point where the light starts to return. So I kind of thought, that's a bit odd. What's that all about? Why is that happening? So I would have thought myself, you've got the year end at Samhain, maybe the year kind of sleeps and starts again at sort of when the solstice comes. So, when you talk about it with people, there's this idea of incubation, this whole thing for the winter. But then I thought, well, there must be something that sort of substantiates all this. Where does it come from? So a bit of digging, you start to find there it is hidden in the mythology. And you've got the practices, which are folk practices, which survive, plus some of which have been recorded in history as well. So really, strong evidence to show that it was a very significant time, and literally is the beginning of the old pagan year in Britain and Ireland, and also in Gaul, which the Coligny calendar has a particular reference to Samhain on it, with 3 days marked very clearly. Obviously, the whole thing was in pieces, but I think there's about 2/3 of the thing, of the big plate that, as it originally was, that they put it back together and maybe managed to sort of translate a lot of it. So, I mean, that's going back into sort of the pre-Christian era, that discovery of the calendar in Gaul. So, it's definitely, you could say that proves it's that old at least. But in my kind of researches, I came across a book by John Gilroy called Clockta Celtic Fire Festival, which he wrote that, and it was published in 1999, I think. Anyway, that's out of print, sadly. It's really difficult to get it. The only place I've managed to get the copy is, going to the library and taking it out repeatedly, so I could, read it or get it out again if I wanted to look stuff up. I actually spoke to him, and he didn't even have any copies himself. So I couldn't buy a copy anywhere. It was like gold dust. But that book was really good, but things have moved on a lot since in the last 20 years in terms of research, and a lot of archaeology has happened as well, which particularly at this place in County Meath called the Hill of Ward, outside a little village called Athboy. And the hill was formerly called Clockta, which, if you trace it back, goes back to this Druidess or goddess called Clockta. And there's a lot of stories about her, and also her father, Mogri. And it's all a bit sort of confused. So one of the things I've done in the book is trying to unpick the stories, because one of the things that happened very much in particularly the Norman conquest onwards, you had sort of a Christian church, but it was a very Gaelicized. And then after Norman conquest, they replaced all of the Irish bishops, and sort of a more sort of egalitarian clergy with a lot more hierarchical, Roman church. So they were very keen to eradicate all of these pagan survivals. And one of the things, of course, was Halloween. They wanted to get rid of Samhain, as it was called. Samhain actually is still a word that you'll find in modern Irish. It's the name for the month of November. So it has survived.
Yeah.
But the actual festival, they are trying to stamp all these practices out, all this Festival of the Dead. That's why you have All Souls Day, or not, All Hallows Day as well. So you've got these 2 days were brought in to try and stamp it out. And then you've also got some St. Martin's Day, a little bit after, beginning of November, which has got associated with Samhain.
Yeah. It's definitely Samhain and Beltane are definitely, the two most popular, I think, pagan rituals of the Wheel of the Year. And of course, when you look at the Earth, they are part of an axis that goes through the Earth. So when it's Samhain for us, it's Beltane for the Southern Hemisphere. And when it's Samhain for the Southern Hemisphere, it's Beltane for us. And one of the things that I love about Samhain is, it's said that the veil between the worlds is thin. I love that kind of part of mythology that is centered around Samhain, where you can utter the name of a friend or relative into the air, and they will hear your words, and they will know that they are remembered, and what is remembered lives. And I love that part about the Samhain ritual, that thinning of the veil. And a couple of years ago, we were in Australia, and we were down there for May for their Samhain. So I had 2 Samhains that year and no Beltane. And I was interested to send out our little spidey senses to see and feel whether or not that veil is thin there too, in May. And it really is. I mean, we did a Samhain ceremony under the stars. The stars were above us. Orion was upside down to me, because we were in the Southern Hemisphere, but that was the only star constellation I could recognize. The moon was waxing and waning backwards. It was very alien. But even in that time of May, you could still feel the influence of the other world in Australia. And that to me is one of the great things about Samhain. I don't know if you have experiences, do you have experiences of Samhain that you can share with us like that, practical stuff that's happened with you?
Well, before I tell you that, you reminded me of something actually, as you mentioned about May, Beltane is one of the 3 times when the veil is supposed to be very thin. So as you mentioned, they're right opposite each other. And so, Samhain, the summer solstice, and also Beltane are times when, the Sidhe, the fairies and the ancestors are more accessible. So it's no accident, really, you mentioning May. It's, that is a special time as far as the veil. And, this ceremony or ritual of a few days even, it can be, has been historically a day, 3 days, even some people say a whole month. Was very much a time for connecting with the ancestors, and also with either connecting with the Sidhe or trying to avoid them, as is also the case for some people who may have been rather, a bit frightened of them. That's why people wore an iron pin in their lapel or something, or in their tunic or whatever they had to try and keep them away, because they could be considered both benign or malevolent depending on your relationship with them. But, one particular thing, for many years I celebrated Samhain and nothing really happened. I might have left a plate of food for ancestors, prayed, or kind of, tried to communicate with, say, my grandmother or something like that, and not really got anywhere with things, and just sort of been a bit disappointed. And one particular year, we did a Druid ritual out in a woodland in Wexford. And as it happened, there were just, for some strange reason, just 2 of us, because, we had quite a decent sized grove, but I think we had like 12 or 13 members. And then on this particular occasion, was just 2. So we went and did our ritual, and we'd sort of sat down and sort of started our meditation. And then there was a sort of flood of the souls of the dead. It just sort of hit us, washed over us, like hundreds of them. And it's almost like getting like slapped in the face, really. It was quite shocking. But then after this had happened, and actually I felt a bit sick actually from the experience temporarily. And then I realized we'd actually been sat down in the middle of a crossroads.
Yeah.
And you're just like, duh, that was really, really stupid to have done that, because you know yourself on an etheric level, spiritual level, it functions the same. It's a place where traffic converges, you know. In a more sinister sense, you probably know about Robert Johnson and, you know, the crossroads, the devil, that they've taken that idea and then just have turned it on its head, where instead of it being sort of a spiritual sort of meeting place, it's a sinister place where you meet the devil at the crossroads, you know.
But actually, it's a liminal space. It's like the seashore or somewhere else. It's a liminal space where two areas meet, and that's it, really, isn't it? That's just and places of power. You reminded me actually of another Samhain experience as well. For a couple of years, me and a group of eclectic pagans, this was many years ago now, went off to a woods here in Sussex called Clapham Woods, and it's a tiny little copse. It's only very, very small. Out near the village of Clapham in Sussex, and it's got a kind of reputation attached to it, which kind of attracted us at the time. We thought, if we're going to go anywhere, let's go to Clapham Woods for Samhain. You know, it was one of those, you know, if it was in a horror film, you would say, no, don't go there. But we did. We just headed off there, and we were walking around, and we found that there within the woods are these dips in the earth, and you could literally walk down into them, and you could have a tiny little ceremonial fire in there, and you couldn't be seen within the woods. And so we went into one of these pit areas, and it was very much like the Well of Sugar. It had overhanging hazel trees. It was very magical. And we did our Samhain ceremony in there, and we had a very similar experience to you. We felt the presence of many, many spirits with us on that night. And it was only later on, when I kind of looked up a bit more about Clapham Woods, that we found out that those pit areas in the woods are plague pits. It's where they basically put the dead of the local villages into these pits, and over the hundreds of years, so they've decomposed and created these pits within the woods. So we were holding a Samhain ceremony above the bodies of people who had passed away through the plague, and it wasn't our ceremony was an honouring of the dead. That's the thing that I think is always important to say. We weren't conjuring anything like that. We were just communicating and just offering remembrance and stuff like that. But we went there the next year, and they boarded it off. You couldn't get into the woods. They put big gates up at Samhain, and I think for a number of years they just wouldn't let anyone in. It's probably the destination of a number of pagan groups in Sussex, and they just got fed up with us probably at Samhain. But that was an experience that will always stay with me as well. It was like you could feel the ghosts with us that night, and it was almost like, oh, you remember we're here. People haven't remembered that for a long, long time, you know. And yes, the veil is thin, without a doubt.
Yeah. Well, I think, I don't think there's much point in being terrified of spirits and the dead, but at the same time, I think they do deserve a certain level of respect. They're not to be trifled with. Years and years ago, a friend of mine, he knew I was sort of studying to be a Druid, and he says, right, let's go down to the graveyard and do see if we can, raise a dead person or something. I said, okay, okay. So when we get there and we call up some spirit of a dead person, what are you going to do when they show up? She says, oh, I don't know, You can say, why have you called me here? What do you want me for? What's going on? And you're like, oh, no reason. I just thought I'd just do it because I felt like it and see what would happen.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's not really a very good reason to do this, is it? So, no, we're not doing it, he said. And, once I explained it to him like that, he was like, oh, yeah, you're right. Actually, that's really stupid and disrespectful.
Yes.
And
yes, absolutely.
I think, a lot of people, maybe because the modern celebrations have got very blasé about all this stuff and just think it's just a bit of fun. Oh, it's a bit of crack, let's sort of go off and do silly stuff. And, it is primarily a festival of the dead. And it's interesting how foreign concepts like the Mexican Festival of the Dead have sort of begun to merge. And that's at a similar time of year. But, they take it very seriously in places like Mexico. Reverence of the ancestors and paying respects to them, whereas that's been lost to some extent in Europe and North America. It's sort of all just fun and tricks and pumpkins, and it's got very detached from it. But the people should have a respect for, not just for the fact that their ancestors are gone, but also they have a certain, I suppose, power in themselves as spirits. So you don't want to be messing with them and really annoying them. You do that at your peril, really. And the same applies to the Sidhe. Otherworldly creatures do have the ability to punish you if you're going to just mess around with them in some sort of trivial manner.
Death is we're very protected from death these days. I think when people pass away, they're taken away from us now. They're dealt with by someone else, and I think that Samhain is a beautiful opportunity to acknowledge our own mortality as well, and also to reconnect with our loved ones, and they don't have to be human either. I always think of my pets at Samhain as well. I don't think that it's only a place filled with human souls. I just feel that connection too, of all those people that I've loved and things that I've loved over the years. And it's probably, when we hold our open rituals for Samhain, it's the one where I just say it's okay to cry. It's okay to cry at any ceremony, but the likelihood is that if you connect with that feeling and you visualize your father, mother, sister, brother, or dog or whatever, cat, and you want to step into the circle and call their name out into the wind of the air to let them know they're remembered, that can create a deep emotion in people. I think that is important too at Samhain, is to just not push that down, but just say, yes, let it go, let it out. This one time a year, it's totally and utterly right to feel those things, and they can feel those things as well. They can feel that emotion. Emotion is energy in motion, isn't it? And so, it goes into the other world and they feel that as well. It truly is a beautiful time of year.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think it's really healthy. I think, I suppose that kind of distancing from death sort of, maybe that began in the Victorian era. And it's sort of got to the point where people might be buried a month after they've passed, which is a very bizarre situation. Certainly from Ireland, for instance, really you're normally buried in 3 days, a week at the maximum. And it's all very compressed. It's very, very intense. You have, the removal of the body, it's prepared, it's not often brought back to the house. You have people coming to the house, paying their respects. Then you have the funeral and you have a wake, and it's very emotional. There'll be laughing, crying. There'll probably be sort of, if this is terribly tragic, like a little baby or something, you won't have sort of the wake the same with all the music and celebration of the life, because obviously it's so tragic. But in normal sense of things. It runs the whole kind of gamut of emotions in a very short time. It's very cathartic. And I think, as you say, Samhain's a brilliant time for this catharsis of dealing with death, dealing with your own mortality, and dealing with maybe some of us have unsaid stuff we never got to say to people who have passed, etc. That it's burying all this stuff, as you said, pushing it down. That's really bad for your mental health, bad for your spirit, your soul. And it is really the perfect time to address all this kind of thing, I think. And it is really, I think you come out of it feeling more complete, enriched, sort of happier, more at peace with yourself, if you've made peace with those who've gone before you, and also learning to sort of be prepared for your own death, and the fact we're not going to live forever. No matter how much plastic surgery you have, or you want to go and be put in a cryogenic freezer in LA or something, that's not the reality of life. We are all going to leave this mortal coil eventually. And, if we learn to accept that, maybe the leaving won't be as painful and traumatic, I think.
That's what I love about the Wheel of the Year, because, of course, after Samhain comes the winter solstice, rebirth. That we see what you see it in nature with the cycles, we see it in the sun and the moon with the seasons, that after death there is still more, and I love that about the Wheel of the Year, and I love that about that little bit of Samhain to the winter solstice, and then of course to Imbolc with the first stirrings of spring. Those three festivals fill me with hope, to be honest with you. I don't see them as dark, even though they're the dark part of the year. They are like the gestation part of the year for new life and new hope and everything that comes after it. Yeah. Well, I think we've been talking for nearly 45 minutes. I mean, it's flown by.
Well, it's been great. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Yeah, no, it's been really lovely, Luke. Thanks for that. People can get your book from all of the usual places, I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also have it on my own website. It's a little bit cheaper than the retail, and it is signed as well.
Brilliant. So, okay, and your website is?
LukeEastwood.com.
LukeEastwood.com. Is that like the hub of all things Luke, that if people go there, they'll find everything else, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much. It's got all the other things I'm in.
All the other links and things like that. So. Thank you. Okay, well, maybe I was going to ask you about a walk in the talk, but maybe I might get over to Ireland and you can take me somewhere rather than...
Yeah, there's a great place. If you do come, there's a few special places, but the one I had in mind in particular is a place called Loughcrew, which is, its Irish name is Slieve Mackay, which is, that's very much associated with the equinox. But, the Cailleach herself is very much part of the winter, and from this time onwards would be very powerful energy at that place. So, if you're ever over, I'd love to bring you up there. It really is quite special.
I have been there, actually, but briefly, because me and Kerry went over to Ireland in my old VW camper, which was a proper Scooby-Doo bus from the 70s. And it was only when we got on the ferry I realised we weren't covered by the AA. And the van sprung an oil leak just as we were going to Loughcrew. So my mind was partly there and partly, oh my God, how are we going to get back home again? But it was so magical. I mean, I remember, sitting there above, and I do remember ravens. I seem to remember the call of corvids being really prominent in the area. And another hill, I seem to remember seeing.
Yeah, there's two. There's another tomb which is closed to the public.
That's it.
A tumulus, I suppose you call it. It's not necessarily really a tomb, but
Well, I'd love to go with you, and you can tell us a bit more about it. So we won't talk too much about it now. But thank you for coming on DruidCast, Luke. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with the book as well. Yeah. And don't forget, everybody, LukeEastwood.com if you want to find out more about Luke and his books. Thank you very much.
Thanks a million.
dead side by side, one soul. United by one force, come from one soul. United by one force, come from one soul. Now I stand and confess that I know we are blessed with the will to survive, standing side by side, one soul. Our mothers, our sisters, grandmother the same. Don't be confused by a different surname. Our mothers, our sisters, grandmother the same. Don't be confused by a different surname. One soul. Positive philosophy, threads of ancestry, regal dignity, roots of a family tree, roots of a family tree, one soul. Our mothers, our sisters, grandmother the same. Don't be confused by a different surname. Our mothers, our sisters, grandmother the same. Don't be confused by a different surname. One soul. Positive philosophy, threads of ancestry, legal dignity, roots of a family tree, roots of a family tree. United by one force, come from one soul. United by one force.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. It was great to chat to Luke about his book, and as well as all of the usual places, it is available from the Orders online store. Just head to druidry.org and you will see the link in the menu. After the interview, you heard a great track from Gina Briganti called One Source. Gina wrote the melody and lyrics, and the music was from Steve Johnson from the mighty Tabot sound system. So good to have some reggae on the show, so thank you very much for sending that in. But this music means we are approaching the end of the show, but before I go, let's have the results of last month's competition. The prize was a copy of the Book of Taliesin, translated by Rowan Williams and Gwyneth Lewis, and the question I asked was, in the tale before Taliesin was given the name Taliesin, he was known by which name? Well, the answer is Gwion Bach, and the first name drawn from the hat and winner of that amazing book is Jess Smith from Canada. Congratulations, Jess. That book will be with you as soon as the post allows. The prize this month is a copy of Luke Eastwood's book, Samhain, and the question I'd like you to answer is, the night of the 31st of October is Samhain Eve, but that day has become known by another popular name. What is that name? The 31st of October is Samhain Eve, but that day has become known by another popular name. What is that name? Come on. That is so easy. Come on, have a go. You know you want to. For a chance to win the book, just drop me an email to podcast@druidry.org along with your full postal address, and one of you will win that prize. So my friends, episode 175 draws to a close, and as it does on this full moon day, magic is afoot and growing even more until we reach the great festivals of Samhain and Beltane. Whichever one you are celebrating, may it be filled with magic and wonder. I'll see you back here again next month for episode 176. But until then, I wish you all peace and blessed be. Goodbye.